Everybody, thanks for watching. So I'm gonna get right into this video. Now, there's been an ongoing debate over the years, as you guys know, about the identity of the ancient Egyptians. Who were they? Now, it's not so much black and white anymore, because a lot of Europeans come to the realization that there's no way they could have occupied, ancient Egypt throughout its history, because, they would have died off because of that sun, the heat there. You still get some Europeans, white people, who will argue that the ancient Egyptians was white, and they would be right in the sense that they were white after conquest, but not before conquest, which we'll get into that. But for the most part, the argument is coming from the people who occupy Egypt today. And it's understandable, because they've been there for thousands of years, but they don't know their own history and where they come from. So a lot of the people who are occupying Egypt today, they're seeing the depictions, they're seeing the movies coming out now. And some mentions have been showing, ancient Egyptians as black. And it's been pissing off a lot of people, and it's been this argument from largely the Arab/Persian community, the people who occupy Egypt today, that black people are trying to basically steal their history because we hate ourselves, or we hate our own history. We don't have any history. Now, let me say this first. Nor have I ever claimed to be ancient Egyptian or a descendant of ancient Egyptian people. I don't come from Egypt. I know my history. I know where my people come from, or what have you. But a lot of us who put out this information are trying to put out the truth. And a lot of us are basically trying to get out, the right information, because we're black as well. And it really has to go towards that. Not that we're trying to steal anybody's history or say we're something that we're not. We can prove what we say. They can't prove what they're claiming. And just because they occupied the land today doesn't mean that they have always been there. But again, I have no bitterness about slavery, or I'm not claiming to be ancient Egyptian. So let's get that out the way for the people who think, oh, we're just being Afrocentric. There are many, many people who are basically engaged in this argument, and there's either you have the facts and the proof, or you do not. A lot of people are holding on to what they have as far as what they're seeing from mainstream media, but the truth is the truth. So now, I'll put up some of these comments from people so you can understand and read for yourself what they think of us. And it's a lot of racism from these people who don't even understand what they are, and that they are part African themselves. So it's kind of crazy. But getting into the argument, we understand these people believe that black people were enemies of the ancient Egyptians, which is so absurd and crazy. Part of that is because they look at the sandals of Tutankhamun. So remember, they found King Tut's sandals, and on his sandals, the bottom part, we can see that he has a depiction of Nubian slaves on his sandals. And we know for a time that the ancient Egyptians were at war with the Nubians, which they would later unite, and the Nubians for a time did rule Egypt. And we know that from the Tasseti, and we know that from the depictions that we see. And the fact that we have over 200 pyramids in Nubia, where in Nubia we can go and we can see a lot of depictions, a lot of Egyptian hieroglyphs, a lot of the cultures and customs from the Nubians. And we can remember, one, I talked about this before, the Nubians and the ancient Egyptians held wrestling competitions. And they have depictions of that exist in Egypt today. Now, what I'm going to show you guys, for the most part, are actual reliefs from Egypt. Not artist renderings, not computer-generated bullshit showing them as being pale skin or, what have you. This is when they pull back the walls and the tombs or what have you, and we can see that these people were black. So the whole thing with King Tut, and these people believe that the ancient Egyptians didn't like black people when they were themselves black. King Tut himself, his depictions are black. The real depictions, we can see him as black. Me with his statue here, it's black. The reliefs, he's black. The Egyptian army, black. Somebody took the time to make all these statues and reliefs black. But these people believe that this is just, it's bull crap. They don't want to accept it. And they stick to the whole term of sub-Saharan African, that sub-Saharan African people are different from Northern African people. And for you to believe that sub-Saharan African people never went to Egypt or never went to Northern Africa is crazy. So for you to believe that black people, that sub-Saharan Africa, never in the history of Africa went north and settled is crazy. there's a such thing called conquest, plain and simple. So the reason why Northern Africa exists as far as being in the hands of these people today is because of conquest. But let me say this first. Understand one, the whole term sub-Saharan Africa was created in the 1930s, plain and simple. It gained traction in the 1980s. So this is very early that they started talking about sub-Saharan Africa. And this was created to steal the identity of the Northern African people and their accomplishments. Because again, you would have to believe that no black people from sub-Saharan Africa went north. Now, first of all, we're going to get rid of this right now. Look at these pictures right here. When you just Google or look at any of the photos of the Egyptian people from the late 1800s to the early 1900s, all of the people are black. You can clearly see that the people working there, the guides, the locals are black, dark-skinned people who was there. This is something that has been talked about in many books. Plain and simple. We know Herodotus in 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 said that the ancient Egyptians were black, likened to the Nubians and Ethiopians, with woolly hair. We know we have the hair of the ancient Egyptian people in the Cairo Museum. It's clearly black hair. There is no European or Arab Persian people who has this hair, who has the black hair. When we look at all the pictures and we do a comparison of the hair, the hairstyles, as well as the clothing styles, there is no people on the planet that resemble or has this hair other than African people. So when you look at the style of dress, when you look at the hair, we can clearly see that it's African, it's black. You're not going to go into any European civilization or Arab civilization and find them with this hair or with those clothes. But when you show them this, they want to ignore it. They don't want to accept these facts. They believe it's just computer rendering and that these people were just dressing like the Egyptians. This is crazy. So they don't want to accept that either. Now, the whole thing of, Tutankhamun or Egyptians not liking black people or being enemies of black people, when we see the depictions of them being black, when you go into Tut's tomb, look on the walls, it's black people. I don't believe for 1 second that the people who hated black people, who were the enemies of black people, would ever depict themselves as being black. I mean, think about that. They would never depict themselves as being black. So a lot of these people are just confused. A lot of the Arab people, the people who currently occupy Egypt, have no idea of what they are, or who they are, or where they come from. So when you look at the conquest map, we know one, the Persians conquered into Northern Africa, right? They conquered Egypt. And then we know that the Greeks conquered the Persians. The Persians themselves were conquered by the Romans. We had the whole Greco-Roman era. So when you look at the conquest map, we can see it encompasses Northern Africa. So it's called conquest. The Roman Empire conquered, and then we know later we had the Arab invasion where they conquered. So it's called conquest. What does conquest mean? You conquer a land that did not belong to you. You took it from a people who was there before you. So you can't conquer a land and say it's yours when there were people that were there before you. Those are not your people. It's the same thing happening here. It would be like the Americans or the Europeans that occupied America, the colonists, the colonial territories, saying that they are Native American because they came into America and they conquered the land from the Native Americans, and then they're going to say they're Native American because they conquered the land. When we know they're not. They're two separate people. Understand? It's the same thing that's happening here in Egypt. They've been there so long that they believe that they were always there, and they wasn't. Again, if this was the territory of, or the ancestors of the people who currently occupy Egypt today, I doubt they would dig up the bodies and desecrate the graves of their ancestors. I mean, think about that. There's no way in the world that people who are descendants or claiming to be descendants of a people would dig up their ancestors' graves and put their bodies on display, steal their riches, and desecrate their graves and tombs for tourist dollars. Cairo Museum. Look what's behind me. Beautiful. If it was their ancestors, they wouldn't have dug them up and put their sarcophagus on display. Cairo Museum, people. You can see what they did with the coffins here. our ancestors. When you walk through here, you see all the coffins everywhere that they dug up and took the bodies out. I mean, I know a lot of people are excited about seeing it, but to me it's sick. It's crazy. You know, I mean, everywhere you see all the sarcophagus, all the tombs. I mean, they really dug up all the bodies, took them out. They're everywhere. You know, because they was looking for gold. They was raiding tombs. I mean, this place is amazing. So, you know where most of the stuff went that was in Kemet, that was broken off the walls. It's here. I mean, they just stripped Kemet and put it all in a museum. About to get up close and personal with these pyramids in about an hour. Baking out here. This is the Mina house. And very beautiful. Beautiful place. They got chefs. Music's always playing. You got a good view of the pyramids. Beautiful here. I'm a history guy. I don't like to forget history. We got to remember that, as beautiful as these places be that we visit, they are inhabited, by conquerors. And you got to think, how different would this place be had African people kept hold of it. So I like to remember stuff like that. A lot of places we go travel to that used to be African territory, even Mallorca. You got to think about, it's beautiful and all, but it's kind of sad that it's conquered land. It has been taken over by invaders, but we're gonna try to deal with that. So there's no way white people gonna go into George Washington's grave or Ben Franklin's grave and dig up his body and put the founding fathers' bodies on display for tourist dollars from other people, or dig up the prominent people in their history and desecrate their graves and steal their riches and steal everything and put them in a museum or what have you. They do that because it's not their people. The Egyptians, the people, the Arabs that's in Egypt today do that today because it's not their people. And it's one of the things that they have that we understand is one of the most telltale signs of a conquered people is the fact that they have all of these riches and the accomplishments of Egyptian people on display in the museum. But when you go into any land that they had before conquest, you don't find anything Egyptian. So we can go into the Middle East. We don't find anything Egyptian in the Middle East. If they were the descendants of the ancient Egyptians, where are the pyramids in the Middle East? Where are the accomplishments and the things that the Egyptians did over there, where they come from? They have occupied Egypt for over 2,000 years, yet Egypt is still considered a developing nation. That place is a mess. I've been there. It's a mess. They trashed the place. It's a mess. They're living in poverty. How are you the descendants of the ancient Egyptians who clearly had a technological advancement that we don't have today, who were clearly knowledgeable about so many different spiritual things that the people who currently occupy Egypt today don't follow? Most of them, for the most part, are Islamic. They're Muslim. They don't follow none of these. If this is your people and your culture, how come you don't follow the customs? How come you don't follow the style of dress? How come you don't have the hairstyle? How come none of the stuff you have we see today in Egypt? We don't see any of that today. But we can go to where the Egyptians fled and still find the stuff today. I doubt that if the ancient Egyptians had a problem with black people or hated black people, that they would hold wrestling competitions with the Nubians. I mean, think about it. So again, this is the case where it's just complete ignorance and racism, and these people don't even know what they are or where they come from. So the people who occupy Egypt today, these Arab people, they are of mixed race. They don't even realize what they are. You exist because of African people. You're a part African. You're a part black. You exist because of conquest. You're a mixture. You're a mixed race. So how could you be indigenous to a land that was already occupied by African black people before you were ever even bred or created, before the mixture ever even occurred? This land was already occupied by black people. So how could you be indigenous to this land that black people was there before you? Again, it's in Africa. What these people think about black people. that we didn't invent anything. We didn't create anything. We have no contributions to society. I did a video called The Many Hidden Accomplishments of African People, where you can see what we did and what we accomplished long before conquest, long before these Arab people was ever even known or relevant. We had kingdoms. You can see the ruins of the kingdoms in Africa. We have kingdoms long before any European kingdom, long before any Arab or Islamic kingdom. There was kingdoms in Africa in ruins because of the conquest of the Europeans today. We're supposed to be the unsophisticated people who are upset because of slavery, who have no knowledge, who didn't do anything. When we can look around the world, we can look in Africa and see our accomplishments. These people are the descendants. The people who currently occupy Egypt today are the descendants of tomb raiders and grave robbers, plain and simple. That's what they are. They desecrated graves, they robbed them, and that's how they came to be. The economy thrives on tourist dollars. Plain and simple in Egypt. How much money does America give to Egypt a year? Hundreds of millions of dollars a year? Because it's considered a developing nation, yet you want us to believe that you're the descendants of the ancient Egyptians? Where's the technology? Build the pyramids. Tell us how you built them. So they completely skip over the fact that they wasn't even in Egypt before the Europeans. They wasn't even in Egypt before the Roman Empire, before the Greeks. And what happened, when you really understand, was there was a mixture. When you understand what really happened and how they came about, we know the Aryans came into the Indus Valley. They mixed with the Javadians, the Indians. And this is how we get the Persians and the Arabs. They are of mixed race, plain and simple. So if you look at the U.S. Census Bureau, they actually classify Northern Africa, all the people up there, which is many different shades in color. The U.S. Census Bureau classify all these people as being white. Think about that. This is how bad they want to steal Northern Africa and the accomplishments up there. They gave George Lopez a show just so he can go on there, and every celebrity that comes on there, he wanted to do a DNA test, and he wanted to keep bringing up Sub-Saharan Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. Oh, you are this percentage Sub-Saharan Africa. So again, the whole term Sub-Saharan Africa was created to steal the validity of Africa from black people, the validity, the accomplishments of the Northern African people from black people. And again, this is their own history. Their own historians. This is not from me. Their own white historians will tell you that the ancient Egyptians was black. Not only that, you'll see, again, the conquest map, which is telling you clear as day that you people were not here before the indigenous people. You took the land. Unfortunately, the majority of the people who could attest to these accomplishments were wiped out. They were enslaved themselves. So again, where did all these people come from that occupied Egypt if they were already in Egypt? Why did you come and conquer a land that you supposedly already owned? And you didn't own the territory. You were not there. Black African people was there, just like the majority of Africa is black. It's a conquest map for a reason. The land was conquered, meaning you took it from the original people. And we can trace that back to multiple civilizations again, with the Arab invasion, the Romans conquering it from the Greeks conquering it from the Persians, and the Persians conquering Egypt from the black Egyptians. And this is going up to Herodotus, attesting to them being black. And again, when you go in Egypt, when you look at the reliefs, they depicted themselves as being black. It's just that simple. So again, it doesn't matter what any of these people say, how racist and ignorant they are. We have the proof. We can prove who was there. They have no proof to prove that they have been there before conquest. It's just that simple. No matter what you show a lot of these people, they're going to go back to ignorance. They're going to go back to being racist or what have you. But we have the proof. We have documented proof. We have the fact that, again, conquest proves that you were not there. This is not your territory. We have, again, they want to get into DNA and everything like that. These people don't even understand anything about DNA, because they'll look at King Tut and say, oh, he's brown skinned, not realizing that if you're brown skinned, then somewhere you have black in your genetic bloodline. They think that they are a race separate from African black people, that they are here separately from African black people. They don't realize that Africans were here before anybody else. So yeah, I'll be back. I'll put out another video on just basically getting into this. But yeah, I want to appreciate you guys for taking the time to watch. And yeah, I'll see you guys next video.